All right. Think of the worst problem in society. Well, to these guys, the worst problem in society is that 15% of the people are excluded from the political process. But that's if you see things in terms of black and white. Suppose you don't do that. Turns out the government's an equal opportunity excluder. Now, if you focus on representation, you find out that the Norman Rockwell view is that 50% of the people support an idea, there should be a 50% probability it passes in Congress. Likewise, if no one supports the idea, there should be 0% chance it passes in Congress. If 100% support it, it should be guaranteed. All right, well, what's the actual reality? Two Princeton professors decided to test 1,700 laws to find out exactly how the reality matches up with the ideal. And here's what they found. They found it actually doesn't matter what you think. That flat line there, that turns out to be consistent, regardless of whether no one supports it or everyone supports it. Now, they also discovered something else that was very interesting. That flat line there only applies if you're in the bottom 90% of income. If you're in the top 10% of income, you come closer to that ideal representation. So what does this mean? It means that 15% number is a lot of baloney. It's actually 90%. And if you're in that bottom 90% of income, you basically have a near zero effect on public policy, according to the Princeton professors. All right, well, this leads to what kind of a world? Well, this summer I went out to West Asheville, and I did a survey, and I went out to neighborhoods, and I asked them what they thought of 4 proposals, whether they loved them or they hated them. One of them, for example, was that kids in North Carolina should be covered under medical care. Now notice, forgetting the proposals themselves, notice the unanimous, virtually consensus, as indicated by the X's, as to what the people wanted. But the really important thing is the yellow boxes. The yellow boxes indicate the current state of affairs. Notice the difference between what people want and what they get. And that, folks, is the effect of that flat line and the fact that you've been silenced. Now, when you see something like this, you basically have 2 options, I think. And let's talk about option number 1. Curl up in the fetal position. Well, I actually tried that, but it wasn't very successful. So I decided to come up with option number 2, the concept of district nomination. This is a 4-step process, and let's talk about the steps. So step number 1, we're going to pick the laws on the website. You're going to drag and drop the laws up and down, and as you drag and drop the laws, they're going to be assigned points. And so here, for example, Law A has 70 points, and that's its aggregate points it's going to get as compared with other laws. And if you want to see what the interface looks like on the website, I've got a picture coming up here. You just drag and drop these rows up and down, and as you do, those points on the right start to change. Okay, that's step number 1. What's step number 2? Well, we've picked the laws. Now let's pick the candidates. And we're going to pick the candidates in exactly the same way. It's actually called ranked choice voting. We're going to drag and drop those names up and down. So here, candidate 2, formerly in the 2nd position, now moves up to number 1. Points are assigned to candidate number 2. And again, we do the same process, and we get our top 5 or so candidates. We also have a web interface for this, which, by the way, looks exactly like the interface for the laws. It's the same type of thing. You drag and drop the guys up and down, or gals, and then you have the points going there on the side. Well, this is all great, but now we need the secret sauce. And that's step number 3. We're going to tell these candidates, if you want to appear on this website, you have to agree to put into practice those laws that we all voted for. And so we create a very tight nexus and guarantee representation now. Guarantee that the people get what they want from their representatives. Well, finally, we have to have step 4. This is great, but what do we do if we can't get these guys in office? And that's the district nomination process. The term comes from a law in North Carolina that says we get 4% of the total number of registered voters in a district to sign a petition. We can put them on the ballot, which is great. And the petition looks like one you've seen before. It's basically a sheet of paper with a bunch of lines on it. And it's pretty easy to do. Precinct 15.1 in West Asheville has 2181 registered voters. 4% of that number is 88. That's just 5 of these sheets of paper, and I went out there this summer. It takes about a week to get that many signatures. Now, Buncombe County has 80 precincts. So what you have to do to get these guys in office is you have to duplicate that process, precinct by precinct. And if you can do that and maintain that ratio in the district, you can actually nominate these folks. Now, let's go back to the 4 square idea I talked about. And I just want to do a real poll in the audience. And I want to ask everybody here to see if it's worthwhile. If you like that state of affairs, raise your hands. All right, well, we have a couple people that like it, and pretty much no one else does. And that means that we've got to do something about it. If you want your government to take a hike, then that's what you're going to have to do. All right? Not in the forest, but in the neighborhood, and not with a backpack, but with a clipboard. And that's going to be your solution. When you take action, things are going to happen. You know, the final solution that we've got, it's really what I would call basically a simple maze. You have 2 choices. You can basically curl up in the fetal position and get the 4 square situation, or you can turn around and take a hike. Thank you.